Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Mirror's Edge. We have our destination of finding a security guy who used to be a pro wrestler, so I'm sure that will go swimmingly.
I smell a gimmicky boss fight.
What? Never.
And we don't really have boss fights in this game, so.
Come to think of it, Remember Me had a similar concept for one of its bosses.
Oh, man. Have you guys ever thought about how this is a retro game now?
Yeah, this came out in 2007.
15 years old. It is as close to a retro game as you could probably get.
Well, I usually judge retro game more by design style than by the year it comes out, but Mirror's Edge is such a experimental old game that I think it qualifies even by that metric.
Yeah, it is very strange because Mario 64 was considered a retro game in 2006, and yet there are probably some people who wouldn't consider certain, like even GameCube games retro, like in the mid 2010s. So, like the older the game is, the easier. Even if there's like only a 2 or 3 year gap between them, sometimes people won't consider it retro. It's strange in that way, but
Well, it's because in the PS3, 360 slash Wii, to an extent, GameCube era, is when we kind of finally figured out how to actually design 3D games.
that is also true. And the gap in technology
Yeah.
is less apparent with each jump from console to console.
Well, I would still argue that stuff from that generation has a different design feeling to it than most stuff made nowadays.
Oh, definitely. There's some we've probably mentioned this before, but in some ways, games from 2007 can feel more antiquated than games from 1999 or 2003, depending. Because you go back and you watch a playthrough of your bog standard, let's say God of War clone in 2006 or 2007.
Come on, jump faith.
It feels old, even in a way that the old God of War games don't feel old.
Yeah, kind of.
Like the way the graphics look, quick time events popping up everywhere.
Heavenly Sword, anyone?
Yeah. One thing that I've also think definitely is kind of gone under the radar is also writing and writing and voice direction. I even just between like I'd say 2000 comparing 2000, 2010 and 2020, the bar has gone up for like the minimum in terms of voice direction quality, where 2000 you've got some pretty terrible VA and writing as the baseline versus 2010 where even the worst stuff in 2010 is generally around the same level, I should say, as your mid-tier stuff from 2000, and then repeat that again for now. So people have there's been a lot more effort put into crafting narrative and story as well, which just makes it feel much more, I don't want to say professional, but
Well, it's less that crafting narrative and story in games wasn't so much of wasn't a creative priority back then, but it was very much it was a priority that games frequently had to cut corners for. Like big RPGs would be very text based, or a game that had a lot of like really high tier voice acting, like Legacy of Kain and something or other. They would take a long time to make. And it sounds funny to say this now, but the first Legacy of Kain game took 3 years to make. At the
oh
time,
my gosh.
that was ridiculously long for a development cycle at that time.
Yeah. You look back to games of that era in the 80s and 90s. I'm gonna bring up a Dragon Quest nerd point, but Dragon Quest 2 is infamously difficult, and the ending of that game is notoriously like unfair and unfun, it is because the developers literally ran out of time to balance the final areas of the game because they only had like 10 months to work on it.
It's rare to see that problem pop up in a JRPG specifically, because that's usually an issue that the Western RPGs used to have all the time. Well, they still have it nowadays.
Like Baldur's Gate had like what, a 6 or 7 year development cycle, I think.
Which Baldur's Gate? 3?
3, yeah.
I think it was 7, counting the time it was in early access. And like even in Baldur's Gate 3's case, with all that time, the third act is notably less polished than the first act. So, you know.
The Baldur's Gate 3 script also has something along the lines of like 1 million recorded voice dialogue lines.
Something like
or
that.
Or whatever. Yeah, so, you know.
VG3 is an exceptional, like, outlier
Typo.
case as far as... What? Sorry, what?
There was a typo on it. There's just a fun typo on the screen.
Oh.
Something,
Oh. Okay. Well, what was I saying? Baldur's Gate 3 is kind of like a really, like... It's an outlier in terms of presentation for the genre, because, like, you never see games with that much voice dialogue, that much good animation during the voice dialogue, and quite so much in the way of narrative branching for that long a game. So, like, I mean, Christ alive, they actually got the faces and the body animations, like, all individually done for basically every scene. And it's like...
I really want to play the game. Problem is that not only am I not sure that my old-ass laptop can run it, I don't think my old-ass laptop has enough storage space to hold the game.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's something like 300 gigs of space.
There is the console version. If you've got... like, I think it's...
Do they have it on PS4, or is it just 5 and whatever the new Xbox is?
I think they want it on an SSD.
Yeah, the game kind of does need an SSD to run smoothly.
Yeah. One day I'll play it.
I was able to buy an external solid-state drive for it, but only because I bought the game early access like years before it came out, so I didn't actually need to buy the game for myself at launch. I already had it. So, yeah, that was a thing. 160-something gigabytes or something?
Yeah, it's huge.
I'll tell you what, though. It's storage well spent.
Yeah. Ryan, what version of this game are you playing?
This is the PS3 version.
PS3 version. Okay, so you're playing it on a PS3?
Yep.
Okay, so this game holds up a lot better than I would have expected. This is probably an art design thing where it's very minimal and goes for more stark colors as opposed to complex geometry. Yeah. With that said, it's still like amazing how far things have come since 2008, where I remember this was like mind-blowing to look at in 2008, and like watching playthroughs of this. I don't remember seeing something this stylized, but also this smooth, and the lack of UI is another thing that
they made a big deal about the no UI and elements thing.
Yeah. I mean, the way this game is presented and the way it flows and animates, and it's very like VR before VR gaming was a thing. I think I made a remark about that last session when John was with us, but it has that feeling, and you know, I'm kind of like slightly wondering when EA is going to get off their butt and commission a team to make like a Mirror's Edge VR game, because it seems like a concept that writes itself.
Well, how did the sequel do? Because I remember this getting a sequel was a fairly, like, something people were excited about.
I haven't heard much about the sequel.
It's the most meh game ever.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I'm... Like, I haven't heard, like, much bad about it. It's not like Fallout 4 where people will complain about how it's a betrayal of the themes and leans too much into, like, settlement mechanics or some shit, but... Like, there are no, like, big complaints that I've heard about the game. I just haven't heard anything good about it either.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things where people probably would have heard more about it if it was worse.
Yeah. The surest death for any game is to be unremarkable.
It's just also surprising that this game came out at all, because even in 2008, people hated EA. I want to point that out for anybody younger in the audience. EA has always sucked. I don't think there's been a time where they didn't suck.
In the 90s, they weren't bad.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, I don't... Okay, you know what? As someone who's, like, gotten into the Ultima series, I'm going to say, yes, they were that bad. People just didn't notice.
They had only ruined one series instead of 12, so, you know.
Well, they had a reputation at the time as being a company that devoured smaller developers. So, like, it was a reputation they had, but it was a reputation they had more among developers than among the general public. So, like, consumers just weren't as anti-EA back in the day. Part of that was the lack of the internet, you know.
That is also true, yeah, where, like, I don't think anybody paid as much attention to who specifically was developing games at that point, like, in the sense that things were more like, oh, this is a Nintendo game, this is a Sega game, this is a PlayStation game, versus, like, I think people probably knew that, like, Capcom, Konami, whatnot were things, but they didn't, the companies didn't have those kinds of reputations as much.
The standard,
as they do this year.
the standard for game design discourse at the time was so low that we all collectively thought G4 was a good channel.
Did we?
We did. I mean, people would mock it when a particular reviewer said something stupid, but that was the standard for games coverage at the time. So
It was the only place to watch E3.
Oh, God. Oh, I remember having to put on G4 to watch E3. That was still what you had to do, even as early as, like 2010 or 11. Because otherwise you were waiting for Nintendo Power or... the
EGM
Gaming
or something.
Globe. Yeah.
yeah, like if you wanted to really get into like the game information scene, you had to fuel yourself at least partly by word of mouth.
I remember in 2006 when they announced Smash Brothers Brawl, and the first trailer revealed Snake was going to be in it. And it was behind closed doors, so there wasn't like any streaming of it or anything. They revealed the trailer like a day or two later. And everyone was kind of like, nah, that's bullshit. That didn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, I played Cruel Smash for 5 hours, and I didn't ever unlock Sonic and Tails. So this has got to be some nonsense people are spitting out. I also remember that Smash Brothers Brawl is probably one of the most painful dev cycles to follow, because, like, even information in Nintendo Power was, like, out of date. Like, I remember they had a review for... I could be misremembering, but I believe Nintendo Power had a review for Smash Brawl in their, like, December issue, and the game didn't come out till March. So... I could be misremembering. This was 2008. I was 15.
I just want to say one of the reasons I really hate platforming in first person is that I can always feel it when the character falls to their death, because you're falling to your death from the character's perspective. It's freaking horrifying.
I mean, it's effective for what they're trying to do, for sure. But yeah, no, it's... How well has the, like, controls for this aged?
It's awkward.
It's awkward, yeah, not too surprising. I know first-person platforming is always a little bit wonky, because you never quite know when you're stepping as close to the edge as possible.
Well, it doesn't help, to be honest, as far as, like, for the first person falling to your death jump scares are concerned, that I'm a little bit on edge lately. As far as video game jump scares go, not because I've been playing a horror game, no, but because I've been playing Fallout. And if anyone's ever played a game with a Bethesda engine, you know that the physics shit the bed quite frequently, and every object is a physics engine. Like I'll be creeping through a wasteland ruin, and my character will literally stub their toe and take, like, a little tick of damage by walking over a skeleton. And they'll scream when it happens.
Whoops.
Oh, no. And they'll scream when it happens, and I just jump. because I'm not expecting it, because there's nothing there that should hurt me. But Bethesda has their stupid obsession with every object being a physics object, so shit breaks. It's even better when you quick travel to a location and one of like the dead bodies or free roaming objects that was there just spawns in slightly below the ground, because then you get a never-ending physics explosion every time you visit that area until the game unloads the area from memory and tries to spawn it in again.
I love like when physics objects go nuts. Like if you walk into an area, a physics object loads in and it's trying to like settle down, but it never quite does, and it just jitters till the end of time.
It happens all the time in Bethesda's engines, though, especially in the older Fallout 3 New Vegas engine. You pick up one object from a table, and for some reason it causes every other object on the table to float around. Like, they'll quiver in place and then return to where they were for no reason. It happens, like, almost every time you try to pick up an object that's on a table with other objects.
They were using the Beauty and the Beast silverware and didn't tell you.
It's just like, ugh. I don't even know what the purpose of making all those objects, like, interactable objects was. There was no purpose in Fallout 3 and New Vegas. It just meant that there was a bunch of useless stuff you could pick up and maybe sell.
It's impressive. Look at the interactivity. Worlds interact. If you shoot the table, they'll all go kapoosh. It's fancy.
The thing is, it was so useless in Fallout 3 and New Vegas that Fallout 4's entire design philosophy was basically built around giving you something to do with every single piece of junk you could possibly pick up. So now you have to pick up every piece of junk. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to keep your weapons upgraded. Ugh.
Oh God. What is that?
I mean, I already do that in Fallout 3, so it doesn't really change my gameplay loop much, but it does make it more obligatory than it used to be. Like, I could choose to ignore every single pencil and cup on the desk if I wanted to. I don't, because I'm obsessive compulsive like that, but I could if I wanted, and I'm sure most people do.
Oh geez, this animation, is this an engine or is this like
No, these are
animated?
cutscenes.
This is a special animated cutscene style that they do in the first game. It looks simultaneously stylish and unique and extremely cheap, but you know,
yeah, it's kind of Killer 7 vibes, but I've never played Killer 7. I think the whole game looked like that, right? Hold on.
I don't know. This is
Well, it tried to look like that, so.
This is a little too smooth to be Suda 51.
Yeah. So for Killer 7, the whole game looked like that, whereas this just kind of looks. I don't even know. No, it looks like some sort of weird ass music video.
And right now, I think I'd be doing the same.
Okay, so nice of him to just let her go like that.
Exactly.
That's like our boss, right?
No.
No, it's his.
Oh.
It's her
He's a cop.
It's her sister's boss. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, and her sister's been framed for murder, so.
Yep.